Now that the NFL season's wrapped up, all eyes are turning our attention to the free agents in 2021. And here with me is SI fantasy football analyst Michael Fabiano. And Fabs, you kind of went through every major free agent and you picked and chose where the best fantasy foot would be if they were going to be on a new team, stay with their current team. We have your top 5 most talented free agents for 2021. Let's start off with quarterback Dak Prescott. Is he going anywhere?
Yeah, Dak is certainly the most valuable free agent. I don't consider him a free agent, Joe. He's not leaving Dallas. The Cowboys are going to either do a deal with him or franchise tag him again, which would be very expensive. But Dak, over his first 5 games last season before he went down with that gruesome injury, Bill, he was on pace to have the greatest fantasy football season of all time among quarterbacks. He was playing at a very high level, and the Cowboys were maybe not winning games, but at least they were helping fantasy managers win. So Dak's best fantasy landing spot is exactly where he's been, and that's Big D.
Plenty of weapons there in Dallas for Dak Prescott, assuming he does stay with Cowboys, as you mentioned. Let's move over to running back. There's a few running backs this year. Chris Carson, Kenya Drake, among others. But you have Aaron Jones as your top fantasy football running back free agent.
And he's certainly the biggest name at the position who could potentially be changing teams. He's been a top 5 fantasy back 2 straight seasons. He'll be just 26 years old when next season starts, so he's still in the prime of his career. I'd like to see him go to the Atlanta Falcons, and here's why. Atlanta has a glaring hole in their backfield. Todd Gurley's not going to be back. They don't have another option on that roster. So you put Jones in that offense with Arthur Smith now as the head coach. He'll be calling the offensive plays with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. And we're talking about oodles and oodles of fantasy points, my friend. And that would also have a domino effect. That would allow A.J. Dillon to take over as the top back in Green Bay, which would ultimately elevate his fantasy value as well.
Arthur Smith certainly liked to run the ball with Derrick Henry while he was the OC in Tennessee. Let's talk about wide receivers. 3 of them. There's a lot of wide receivers this year, but you really narrowed it down to 3 wide receivers that you have your eyes on and seeing where they're going to land.
Yeah, the top 3 guys, and I'll start off with Allen Robinson there, who's had 2 straight top 10 fantasy wide receiver seasons in Chicago with those god awful quarterbacks. So listen, he is a very good player. I'd like to see him go back to Jacksonville. Maybe he won't want to go back to Duval because of bad memories, but Blake Bortles isn't there anymore. Trevor Lawrence will be the quarterback, and imagine the sweet fantasy music that Lawrence and Allen Robinson can make together. I'd really like to see that. And then Kenny Galladay in Detroit. This past season, he was a disappointment. He missed a lot of the season due to injuries. He is slated to be a free agent, but they're also going to lose Marvin Jones in free agency in all likelihood. Danny Amendola is a free agent. I think they're going to keep Kenny Galladay, and I think his best fantasy value would be staying in Detroit. And I know Jared Goff's there, and I don't love Goff by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not like Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp weren't successful from a fantasy standpoint while Goff was the quarterback in LA, and Galladay ultimately would be his top option in the passing game. And I would think, Bill, that the Lions would have some negative game scripts where they'd have to throw the football. So Galladay staying in the Motor City would be great. And then finally, Chris Godwin, who just won a Super Bowl. So he's going to be happy about that. He's got his ring. And I don't know if Tampa Bay can keep him, right? They've also got to consider that you've got Shaq Barrett. Levante David's going to be a free agent. They've got other places where they could use the franchise tag, and they could ultimately bring back Antonio Brown at much less than what Chris Godwin's going to want. So if Godwin leaves Tampa Bay, I'd like to see him go to the Philadelphia Eagles. Why? Alshon Jeffrey's going to be gone. Deshaun Jackson's going to be gone. They have Jalen Reagor there. I don't know if he's a number 1. I'd love to see Chris Godwin in Philadelphia catching passes from Jalen Hurts and see what he can do as a true number 1 wide receiver, because in Tampa Bay, Bill, there's a lot of mouths to feed.
There certainly are a lot of mouths to feed in Tampa Bay. And then they're all pretty full, right? Because they just won that Super Bowl. So kudos to Tom Brady and gang. Fabs, you have 20 of your top free agents. You can check it all out. Go to si.com/fantasy for more.